It's time to pull those belts tight, race fans. The front stretch is coming at you, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Now, here's Dan Taylor and Dirk Houston.
Well, good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Online at joeskarting.com. Fast-paced, white-knuckle racing just across the river on 23rd Avenue in Council Bluffs. Get over to Joe's Karting today. Do some fast-paced, white-knuckle racing with new eco-friendly Honda engines. I gotta stop saying new. I think those engines are about
at least a year and a half, 2 years old.
Yeah, because they replaced those just before you joined the show, Dirk. So they're still eco-friendly, though. They're putting out less emissions, and even though it's starting to warm up, it's a great time to be inside. They still keep the place heated, and they circulate the air very often, so you don't get that fumey smell. Well, we got a big show lined up for you today. I am Dan Taylor. That is Dirk Houston. Today, in turn number one, we're going to recap the Daytona 500. We're going to talk with Chad Robb about the West Coast Swing and the NASCAR FantasyTips.com. Chad, how you doing this morning, bud?
All right. Thanks for having me on the show.
Always do appreciate you joining us. Turn number two, Anthony Ainslie from Junction Motor Speedway, I-80 Speedway, and the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series is going to join us to preview the Beatrice Raceway schedule, the Junction Motor Speedway schedule, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Malvern Bank Super Late Model schedule. Then in turn number three, we're going to talk with Tony Bokhoven, announcer at Knoxville Raceway. Rough week for those guys as they have lost a staple in their community, a pillar in what has become Knoxville Raceway with Ralph Capitani passing away on Monday. So we wanted to talk to Tony a little bit about Ralph and some of the important things that he's done, because a lot of us being over in this side of the state, we don't know a lot about Knoxville Raceway and the big impact that Ralph had, not only on Knoxville, but also tracks in the area copying what Ralph did.
Yeah, he was the mover on what made Knoxville what it is.
Exactly. Turn number four, we will preview Atlanta, and we will talk about the Pick'ems result. But let's get to turn number one, and that Daytona 500. Chad, I want to get your thoughts on the Daytona 500. What did you think of the stage racing, and what did you think of the racing overall?
I thought it was pretty competitive. I really thought it was pretty good. I know a lot of people complaining about the wrecks and saying that the stage racing caused the wrecks. I really don't think that's the case.
I completely agree with you. Anybody that says stage racing caused all the wrecks at Daytona obviously didn't watch Daytona before February 26th, because they've been wrecking at Daytona and Talladega for decades.
Well, and I think in the truck race, the Xfinity race, there were two wrecks that I do think you can take directly to the stage race, because they were racing right, and they happened right at the end of the stage. Mm-hmm. But that's what everybody's been complaining about, is nobody's racing.
Right.
So now they're racing, and they're still complaining.
Yeah.
But as far as the 500 goes, the wrecks, they were all over the place. They had nothing to do with the stages.
Exactly. In fact, I thought it was pretty organized coming to the end of the stages.
Yeah, I personally, the only thing I didn't like, and we talked about it during the race, was 7 and 8 laps under their competition caution between stages is too long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Way too long.
Yeah. But the competition was great at Daytona. I thought it was a good race. I thought they did a very nice job. There was a lot of moving and shaking. It wasn't right until the end there with that last, 20 or 15 laps to go, when they all kind of got single file for a while there.
They ran about the last 35 laps knowing they were going to get to 2 or 3 laps to go, and that's when Kyle Larson started trying to make a move with 3 laps to go.
Yeah.
Where normally these guys have been waiting until the last lap to make a move. The last 3 laps had some excitement.
Yeah.
And I think the big story coming out of this, if Kurt Busch wouldn't have won the Daytona 500, the story would have been the young guns.
Yeah.
The Chase Elliott's, the Kyle Larsons, the Ryan Blaney's, all these young drivers, the future of the sport. It really looks like the sport's in good hands with these young drivers.
I absolutely agree. I think there is some incredible talent that is coming into this sport. And just to kind of piggyback off of what you were talking about there, Chad, Kurt Busch got the win, but how about that? Ryan Blaney ends up hanging on there for the runner-up spot. What a good run for that 21 Wood Brothers team.
He is one of the young, smart drivers out there, and a lot of people said if he could just get out of that Wood Brothers car, I think he could really take off. Mm-hmm. I think he could really perform well in the Wood Brothers car.
Well, it's been proven. Yeah. I mean, that run he had last week was a very good run. There were several guys. Again, another young driver that you didn't mention was Austin Dillon.
Yeah.
He was there the whole race,
Absolutely.
and he ran excellent in the Xfinity race with a very torn-up car. I think he ended up second or third in a car with a quarter panel hanging out in the wind that should have been like a parachute.
Yeah.
Our buddy Brendan,
He did very well for himself, too.
eighth coming out of turn 4 and ran out of gas and ended up 11th.
Yep.
But
And that, by the way, was Kyle Larson's issue. His car sputtered. It was why Chase Elliott gave up the lead, too. Chase Elliott, because they were all coming down. We were at Quaker Stakes, so we couldn't hear all that going on.
Well, but remember, I asked you with about 40 laps to go, when did these guys stop for gas? Because I knew their window was about 45 laps.
My memory was a little hazy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, your lube tube was gone by
After
then.
my girlfriend bailed on her after her second glass of that lube tube, I knew things were going to get a little rough. And they did.
But,
Thankfully,
yeah, the gas issue was a big deal. Ended up playing a factor in the
Chase
race.
Elliott sputtered, so he fell out of the draft, and then Kyle Larson sputtered. They were both able to collect their car and finish, but they sputtered. And I remember them talking about. I went back and rewatched it, and they. The old man, Kurt Busch's crew chief, said that lap to go, you flip that switch for the reserve, so we've got enough fuel to get to the end, and that was the magic ticket.
Well, but, I mean, Chase Elliott was leading the pack.
Yeah.
He was flat on the floor where everybody else wasn't doing that. So everybody else technically was conserving fuel.
Yeah.
And why they went to the high side is tires and everything were gone.
Yeah.
They didn't have any choice but to go to the high side. They couldn't stick on the low side of the track. And if they had been able to run that last 35 laps on the low side of the track, Chase Elliott might have won the race because he might have had enough fuel.
A.J. Allmendinger third, Eric Almirola fourth, Paul Menard fifth. Three guys that definitely wanted to see a top 5 finish to kick off the 2017 season. Joey Logano, Casey Kane, Michael Waltrip finished eighth in his final race for a NASCAR Cup Series. Matt DiBenedetto and Trevor Bayne rounded out your top 10. We talked about Brendan Gaughan finish 11th, Larson ended up finishing 12th. Very good finishes for a lot of guys. Then you have guys like Matt Kenseth, who came home tail end. Charlie, Eric Jones, Kyle Busch, Dale Earnhardt Jr. all finished outside the top 35, along with Johnson, Patrick. It was your typical Daytona that it had wrecks. Some of the big guys were taken out early. Some of the big guys were taken out with on that last big one. So you're seeing a big shakeup in the points. But overall, guys, I think that was a good Daytona 500.
Yeah, I had nothing wrong with the race. It's the first time I've sat for the whole race in a long time.
Yeah. Chad, I wanted to have you in to kind of preview the West Coast swing. Now, a lot of people say, okay, Daytona's over with. The real NASCAR season starts because this is where it's all about aero. It's all about engineering. It's about setup. It's about strategy. Daytona's very much survive, make your move. This is very much a completely different time when we head to the rest of the season, and we're going through the West Coast swing. So let's start off with Atlanta as we're headed to today.
Hey, Dan, Atlanta's in the east, just to let you know. It's not on the West Coast.
It's in the east? Well, they're calling it the West Coast swing. It's a part of the, I don't know, whatever.
It doesn't. The West Coast swing doesn't start till after Atlanta. So.
All right, fine. Then let's start with Atlanta, and then we'll move on to the West Coast swing if you want to be all geographically correct and such. I mean,
use Nebraska geography instead of Iowa. How's that?
Well, we don't want to be completely backwards.
I think it is west of Daytona, though.
You're right.
So
There. Thank you, Chad. You may now have earned yourself a permanent spot as a member of this show for backing me up because I'm a bit of a dummy. Jimmy Johnson, last 2 races, 2 wins in a row. Had an absolutely phenomenal driver rating. He's led 21% of the laps for the last 2 races at Atlanta. What do you have for other drivers that if somebody wants to hold on to Jimmy Johnson, maybe his 2 in a row is over with and we're going to start seeing a little bit of a rougher run from Jimmy Johnson, who else would you recommend for today for Atlanta?
Well, if you didn't get your big shot with Kurt Busch last week, this is the week to do it.
You think so at Atlanta?
This is statistically his best racetrack over his career.
Okay.
And last year, he started on the pole by default. His brother actually won the pole, but he got disqualified in qualifying, so he had to start in the back of the pack. And Kurt, he was up there, led about 67 laps in the race, finished 4th. I think this would be a good week. You know, a lot of people say that momentum from winning the Daytona 500 carries over for a couple of weeks. I think he would be a good pick. And another guy, if you want to really go off base, Casey Kane.
Really?
I know he ain't your favorite driver.
You and your picks.
his last race that he won was at Atlanta in 2014. It's been 85 races since he's been to victory lane.
At least you didn't say 2004.
Yeah, it seems like 2004.
Yeah. It is a contract year for him, so that tends to be an extra motivator. If he's not auditioning for that ride at the 5 at Hendrick Motorsports, maybe that ride's already taken care of and we don't know about it yet. He may be auditioning for another ride, so he's got to get up on the wheel and start getting some wins under his belt.
If you look at how them Hendricks cars ran into chase last year at the 1.5-mile tracks, they really ran good. Casey Kane finished in 10th. In the top 10 in 3 out of the 4 intermediate tracks. So this might be a good week to take a gamble with him. You just got to see.
And it's the final time they're going to race on this surface, because after we're done today, they're going to start tearing that surface up and repaving it, which a lot of drivers are crying about. And it's nothing to their fault. They love this old abrasive track and how you slide around on it and you wear them tires down quickly. But unfortunately, the surface is just time for a new one.
Yeah, like I said, I'd listen to the racers. They're listening. That's the problem with the sport. They listen to them on one thing, but won't listen to them on another.
Yeah, so it'll be a rough race next year because it'll be all grip and there'll be a lot of speed.
In the fall, when they run again, it'll be a rough race.
They don't run again.
Oh, that's right. They took that second Atlanta race off
the
schedule.
They've only got one race on the schedule now. So
that's terrible.
All right, then we head to Dirk.
Las
Vegas is in the West Coast, right?
Yes, it is.
Then we head to Las Vegas for the real West Coast swing. And let's see. Brad Keselowski got the win this time last year, followed by Joey Logano. Jeff Gordon was not in the car. That was Chase Elliott. Then Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon, your top 5. So just because I completely butchered that, Keselowski, Logano, Elliott, Kyle Busch, and Dillon were your top 5. What do you have for this weekend, for next weekend for us when we go to Las Vegas?
Okay, before we preview this race, do you remember what happened last year in Vegas? The big sandstorm coming in, and they had to delay the race for almost an hour because of a sandstorm.
I completely forgot about that.
I just hope that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
But as far as the racing goes, this is a crew chief's race.
Okay.
You know, it always seems to come down to fuel mileage, and that's why them Penske cars are so good. And Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, this is their best track right here. They always qualify up front. They always run up front. And I think they're going to be the drivers to beat. And if you want to go a little off base, look at Austin Dillon. Mm-hmm. He ran pretty good at this race last year. He started up front and led a couple laps. I think he's knocking on the door of getting the victory lane. And this could be the week that it actually happens.
Then we head March 19th to Phoenix International Raceway for the first of 2 Phoenix races, and these are 2 completely different races. I mean, we've got one in March, and then we wrap up the round of 8, November 12th at Phoenix. So completely different times for this track. But the March race this time last year, it was Harvick obviously got the win, Edwards, Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and then Dale Jr. Jr. was able to get the win here one time, but he's the only one that's able to wrestle away a win at Phoenix. I guess this time at the fall race in Phoenix, Harvick wasn't able to get the win, finished runner-up. But are we starting to see a chink in the Harvick Childers armor with their wins here, their advantage at Phoenix?
Well, they only won last year by about a quarter of an inch. I mean, that's that. If he had had another lap, Carl would have beat him last year.
That's right, because remember they came off 4 and they were bouncing. That's right. That's this race.
I really think that Carl's going to have his hands full. And in order to look at what's going to happen in this race, you got to look at the test that occurred geez, what is it now? A month and a half ago, I
Yeah,
guess?
it'd be about
Yeah,
there.
it was in
Yeah.
January. Yeah.
But Joey Logano and Kyle Larson had the two fastest cars out there.
That's right.
And Joey was fast on the long runs, while Kyle had the fastest short run car. And Kevin Harvick, he finished in the top 4 in every practice, but he didn't dominate like he usually does.
I would wonder if they wouldn't sandbag just a little bit. You know, I think of Rodney Childers right up there as wily as Chad Knaus, because they never show their cards. They're always playing a bigger strategy than we all understand, because they can hold things as close as possible to the chest. I would wonder about that. So last year, Harvick able to get one of the wins, but not able to get it in the final race, and that was the win he really needed to move on to the final round at the championship Sunday. Or excuse me, no, he was eliminated before that. Excuse me on that correction. But what do you think about Suarez at Phoenix? Edwards obviously had a good car last year this time, as we were talking about with the battle with Kevin Harvick. But with Suarez taking over that ride, what do you think about him being able to get up there? Or is it just a little bit too soon?
I think it's too soon on him. The driver I really like, there's really 3 drivers I really like in this race.
Okay.
And the obvious choice is Kevin Harvick. And then Joey Logano, he won the last race there. He dominated the last practice. And then what you talked about earlier is Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Yeah.
You look what Alex Bowman did in this race in November. He won the pole, and he finished, I believe, in the top 5. I know there was a late restart at the end of the race, and he started 3rd in the restart, and I think he got bumped out of the way a little bit. But the way Alex Bowman ran in this race last year, you got to figure that Dale Earnhardt Jr. could get up there and compete too.
And he's got a win here too, so he knows how to win at Phoenix.
And he finished in top 4 also in all the practice sessions in January. So
the final West Coast swing happened Sunday, March 26th with Auto Club Speedway. Jimmy Johnson got the win this time last year, in March of last year, followed by Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., a nice top 5 finish for him. Chad, outside of those top 5s or inside those top 5s, who's your thoughts for Auto Club Speedway coming up at the end of March?
I really liked him Joe Gibbs cars at this track. Last year, Matt Kenseth probably would have won this race. I don't know if you remember. He got a penalty on pit road for improperly fueling the car.
That's right, because the gas
man was putting the gas in the car while he was making a
wedge adjustment. Right, that's right. And he's not allowed to do anything but fuel the vehicle, and that's where they got in trouble. And he got sent back a lap, right?
Yes, and then when they came out of the pits, Denny Hamlin was winning, and he ended up getting a penalty. So all
Shocker.
the Gibbs cars, and then I don't know if Dirk had talked about this, but a lot of the Gibbs cars had problems blowing right front tires.
It'd just be a setup deal, and I'm pretty sure on most of the front end geometry and everything, all 4 of those Gibbs cars are probably right in the same. Rusty Wallace was kind of the most famous guy because he used to push the envelope on the right front setup, and he would blow right fronts. You get running down that straightaway, and you got your tire laid up with a bunch of camber in it, and you just wear out the inside on the tire, and that's probably what happened to Kyle Busch in Daytona, to be honest with you.
Well, that's a funny story. We'll have to get to that in another show, but Goodyear is not letting that comment go. They've got a full forensic investigation going on that. They're mad. I think they're pretty upset at Kyle Busch for making that comment, but let's get back to Auto Club. Your thoughts are pick a JGR car.
I like the Joe Gibbs cars.
Okay.
Maybe going with Kyle Busch or Matt Kenseth. They're pretty good in this race. And then another thing about California is it's one of the hardest races on the circuit on engines. They really push them engines hard at this place.
Because it's a big, wide track.
Yeah.
And there is easily 3 grooves. Obviously, you could probably go 5 wide at that track, but really when you're talking about room for the cars to slide, there's an inside, a middle, and an outside groove.
Well, NASCAR allows 2 rear-end gears.
Okay.
And they're very close in their actual ratio. That's why you'll see a lot of those guys, because if they're geared in the 1 gear, they can only run the low side because they can't go up to the high side. And if they have to go to the high side, that's when they're pushing the envelope on their engines and blowing stuff up.
Speaking of high side, Kyle Larson has to be the pick because the last time they ran this package at Michigan, another 2-mile track,
almost identical to California.
Yeah, he won the race.
Yep.
So you can't really count him out. Last year, he hit that wall at California about 200 miles per hour. I don't know if you remember that, but I hope he ain't gun shy going into the corners.
I don't know if he knows what gun shy is.
Yeah.
So that's our West Coast swing plus Atlanta. And with Chad Rupp, if you want any information, log on to NASCARFantasyTips.com. Chad's got a great website going, a lot of great articles, a lot of great information on who you should take each race weekend. And don't forget to subscribe to his website to get a lot of insider information. Chad, always do appreciate you joining us. Thanks for your help with your breaking down the Daytona 500. We're going to be back in turn 2. We'll talk with Anthony Ainslie, then Tony Bokhoven in turn number 3, and we will give our previews for Atlanta today and a recap of the Pick'ems contest in turn number 4. A lot of show left to come. Make sure you stick around. We'll be back here on the front stretch.
Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs has taken a page out of IMCA's rulebook and gone crate. These brand new low-emission engines will still have you white-knuckling it all through the Metro's fastest indoor facility. Joe's Karting is now friendly for all skill levels with their brand new Honda-powered engines. It's time to get to Joe's today and find out what drivers like Jack Dover, Shaylee Bate, and Andrew Kosiski have known for years. Located in Council Bluffs and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K.
We're hooked up in turn 2 and still showing the green flag on the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch. Heading into turn number 2, it's time to talk with Anthony Ainslie, the voice. Here you go. He's just like Stan Caesar. He's the voice of Junction Motor Speedway, Beatrice Speedway, the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series, pits, booth announcing, and all-around great guy at I-80 Speedway. That's Anthony Ainslie. How you doing, bud?
Oh, doing all right.
Let's kick things off. We're going to go in order of who's starting first, and that's going to be Beatrice Speedway, the best of the Midwest. You've got a big 3-day event coming up. IMCA Spring Nationals, practice on Thursday. Then you've got looks like modifieds, B-mods, sport compacts, and hobby stocks for Friday. If I'm reading the initials correct, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But then
I believe it was stock cars.
Okay.
On Friday.
Okay, and then same thing. Looks like modifieds, B-mods, stock cars, hobby stocks, and what's the T's?
The compacts.
Okay. All right, that's the abbreviation for the T's. So that's going to be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday show. What's in store for fans that weekend if we're able to get some nice weather and we can get out to Beatrice for that opening weekend?
Well, a lot of excellent racing for sure. I mean, if last year is anything to go by, this is going to be even crazier than last year. I mean, we had over 350 cars on both nights, almost over 115 modifieds on both nights, and just a star-studded lineup. You know, we had just about everyone who was anyone: Terry Phillips, Jordan Grabowski, Dylan Smith, Jimmy Gustin, Jason Crone. We had everyone in that field. And then, of course, on Saturday last year, we had that wild finish with Jay Notaboom coming off with the feature win. So I'm expecting another great field of cars. The pits are going to be stacked to capacity. I don't know what they're going to plan on doing for the pit area because Beatrice Speedway is thinking they're going to have even more cars than last year.
Wow.
So it's going to be incredible. I mean, hopefully we'll see another great field. We had about 85 sport mods there last year. We had about 50 stock cars on top of the 100-plus modifieds. So I have no idea how they're going to fit any extra cars in there. But fans out there they can expect a lot of top-tier talent from across the nation. It's going to be another fun show.
And not only, I mean, it's kind of a perfect storm for a large car count because it's IMCA sanctioned. So majority of the tracks and majority of the cars in this area run IMCA rules for their setups. And it's the first race of the season in this area. So a lot of guys have had it on their calendar since November, since maybe even October, when seasons were wrapping up, that I got to get my car ready to go for Beatrice that 9th, 10th, and 11th, and I can get out there and race it for the first time.
Yeah, the Spring Nationals really creeps up on us. I mean, right now I just realized it's a week away. I mean, we're just about a week away from it, and I'm getting excited. I still have to get a few things around before I'm set to go for the 2-day weekend, and I tell you what, this Spring Nationals continues to grow and grow. I believe last year it was probably the biggest IMCA event outside of the Super Nationals, and I like that growth. It's a good race for Nebraska, and it's definitely become one of the best weekends in Nebraska dirt racing, and it kicks off the year for a lot of us.
Absolutely. A weather date has been set up for the following weekend if they're not able to get it, if Mother Nature doesn't cooperate and the races aren't able to get in on the 9th, 10th, and 11th. So that'll happen on March 16th, 17th, and 18th. And then you guys have your test and tune for weekly racing on Saturday, April 22nd. And then your weekly racing kicks off on Friday, May 5th.
I think Beatrice should have a great season again, and the Spring Nationals will be a great opening, a good opening act, you could say, for the Gage County Fairgrounds. And I'll be planning to make a couple of stops out there. I mean, especially during the Gage County Fairground races, and as well as the Spring Nationals and Septemberfest to close out the year.
Yeah, it looks like heavy with the Spring Nationals to kick things off, and then Septemberfest ends things. So their race schedule is bookmarked with two big specials that a lot of people gear up for.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun to close the Open and close the year, as well as you have that Sprint Series of Nebraska show during the Gage County Fair on a Sunday afternoon. There are going to be a few good shows. I mean, definitely, if you get to Beatrice for the Spring Nationals during Gage County Fair weekend, you have about 3 big nights of action. You know, Friday, the weekly racing. Saturday, you got the Eve of Destruction. And then Sunday, you have the County Fair race special with the Sprint Series of Nebraska, as well as the Sport Mods and Hobby Stocks. And then, of course, Septemberfest. So you got 3 big weekends to add to the racing season out at Beatrice. It's going to be another good season for one of the top weekly tracks in the state of Nebraska.
Like you're saying, we're shocked about this because it snuck up on us. It's this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at Beatrice Speedway. Get to BeatriceSpeedway.com. Google them if that's not the exact address, but then like them on Facebook and get all the information. But again, that is scheduled to go off this Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Weather date planned for next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, March 16th, 17th, and 18th, if they're not able to get it in this weekend. Let's move over to Junction Motor Speedway, your home away from home. You guys kick things off March 18th, so the following weekend with the Mike Chapin Memorial Spring Thaw. And looks like most classes for both of those, except Saturday's going to be no sport compacts, but they'll be there on Sunday for a full field. Hobby stock, stock cars, sport mods, modifieds, late models.
It's going to be our first chance to have our weekly racing program drivers come out and get a good feel for the racetrack and just work the bugs out before the point season gets going, and it's also a good chance for a lot of outside drivers to get a race weekend under their belts and get a chance to feel out their cars for the upcoming season. And the spring thaw, it's been marred by a couple of rain delays the last couple of years. I mean, last year, of course, we couldn't quite have it. I mean, we were still having the winter weather around that weekend. But hopefully the weather holds off this year, and I think we could open the 2017 season at JMS with a pretty successful 2-day race weekend.
Talk to me about Mike Chapin. What was his role over there at Junction Motor Speedway and in the community, and how the memorial race came about?
Well, Mike Chapin, of course, he's been around the racing community for a long time. He used to be a late model driver, I believe, competed out at the old Mid-Nebraska Speedway out in Doniphan. And Chapin also was basically the front gate operator out at the Junction Motor Speedway where everyone checked in and checked out. Chapin ran the pit shack out at the main gate in the pit area, and he has done that ever since JMS was constructed back in 2004. And I believe 2 or 3 years ago we lost Mike. He had, I believe, to natural causes. We had a nice funeral service for him back at York, and brought out a ton of race cars for his ceremony. And it happened to be the same Saturday that we had a USAC sprint car show. So I think it was a pretty good fitting that his funeral service was done on a race day. But ever since that Saturday, of course, we've dedicated the opening race to Mike Chapin, who's always been helping out at Junction Motor Speedway throughout his life. And it's a nice fitting tribute for one of the guys who's been with the racetrack ever since it was born. And he'll always be part of JMS's legacy.
March 18th and 19th, again, we've been talking about the Mike Chapin Memorial Spring Thaw. Again, hobby stock cars, sport mods, modifieds, late models. No sport compacts on Saturday, but they'll be there on Sunday for the wrap-up of that two-day show. Then it looks like it's going to kick really into a lot of weekly racing action, and JMS seems to do a lot with adding special classes for each week. So in May, you've got the Nebraska Mod Lights, then you've got the Nebraska 360s and the Gatra. In June, you've got the Nebraska Mod Lights, the Nebraska 360s. It kind of circulates between some of those touring series, including the Malvern Bank Series.
Yeah, I mean, once again, the Malvern Bank Super Late Models has 3 races scheduled for Junction Motor Speedway. I think Junction's only one of 2 tracks that has 3 or more Malvern Bank Super Late Model shows on their schedule. And, of course, we'll alternate with the Nebraska 360 series. You know, they've always had about 2 to 3 shows on their schedule for McCool. And now the Nebraska Mod Lights are really stepping up now. We have about 3 or 4 shows of them along with our weekly racing program. And, of course, we can't forget the big King of the Hill late model shootout with the Lucas Oil MLRA series. You know, they'll be teaming up with the Mars Dirt Car series to run a couple of nights out at Junction. We had an excellent show last year. Terry Phillips completely dominating both races, led every lap of both features, and walked away as undisputed King of the Hill. So we'll see what this year will bring when the MLRA rolls into town. We have a couple more regular competitors with the MLRA. I mean, Rodney Sanders is looking to grab Rookie of the Year for that series, and of course, Terry Phillips and Jesse Stovall, they're always going to have their hats in the ring for that tour. So it should be a fun weekend for King of the Hill, as well as all the extra specials we've got.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to overlook the Saturday, May 6th, Brad Fosberg Memorial Race, plus the Malvern Bank Late Model Series with the weekly racing action. So that's going on Saturday, May 6th. So you guys end the season a lot like you started it. You started it with the Mike Chapin Memorial Spring Thaw on a on a Saturday and a Sunday, and then you end it with the Barb Camp Memorial McCool 100. Same thing there with the classes hobby stock cars, sport mods, modifieds, late models. No sport compacts on Saturday, but they'll be there on Sunday to wrap up the season.
Yep, that's the same way, of course, in Barb Noonan Camp. Of course, she's been involved with Junction Motor Speedway for many years. I believe 2009 we lost Barb, and she was always a helpful hand down in the concession stands. She kept a lot of the bookkeeping in order, and of course it's always and the McCool 100's become a pretty good race to close out the year for many racing seasons, and I believe it's also the last race on the Nebraska racing season for 2017. It's usually the last race in the state. So I think it's a nice way for Junction Motor Speedway to help open the season and close the season for Nebraska. And we've got a couple of good 2-day shows to do that.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we sat down with Joe Koziski and talked about the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series schedule. I got a couple of questions for you. Do you have a cuss jar going for the SLMR Series versus the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series?
Oh, man, I'm pretty excited for this year. I mean, it's going to be a fun show all the way around.
Well, I have a cuss jar going for the Sprint Cup Series versus the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. Every time I start to say Sprint Cup Series, I got to put $1 in the jar. I did that when the Nationwide left and it became the Xfinity Series. So now I'm going to do it with the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series. Anytime I start to say the SLMR Series, I got to put $1 in the jar, and at the end of the year, maybe I'll be able to buy a couple of beers for some friends at the Homestead viewing party. But do you have anything like that going to try to keep yourself motivated to remember it's the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series this year?
No, I haven't. I just have Joe Koziski's word that that the name's been rebranded. I mean, Joe's really getting it into my mind, and I'm trying to practice it every chance I get. So right now I don't have a swear jar going, but I'll definitely have it ingrained into my mind as soon as we get things started up in May.
You know, maybe this is just me being around Joe Koziski a lot in the offseason, but he had a lot of tracks that were calling to add the Malvern Bank. See, I almost did it there. I almost did it, but I caught myself. Almost said it. He had a lot of people that were calling to have have him add to their weekly racing action or to one of their specials, and he's very adamant, 21 race dates, and to try to keep it within a 2-hour driving range for most of these guys. You've got some really nice, not only tracks on the schedule, but also there's some big drivers that are talking about adding to the schedule, at least maybe not full-time, but to try to test out the schedule and then run it full-time in the next year or two.
Absolutely. I mean, Joe was keeping me excited throughout the off season. When I talked to him at the turkey chase, he was talking about possibly a 3-day weekend down in Kansas. I mean, and that's actually going to become a 2-day weekend. Unfortunately, we couldn't keep the race out at Topeka, Kansas on our schedule. We had to take that off, but still, a 2-day swing through Kansas. I mean, Friday and Saturday, June 16th and 17th, we're going to be down at Lakeside Speedway in Kansas City. Then we make our debut at the Thunder Hill Raceway down in Mayetta, Kansas. And from what's a little extra source, Todd Boyd, a pretty well-known late model photographer around the Midwest, he told me during Silver Dollar Nationals weekend that Marshalltown Speedway out in Marshalltown, Iowa, they were thinking about having the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series.
There's
I caught myself on that.
There's $1.
Yeah. But yeah, he told me Marshalltown was thinking about having us out there. I thought that was a pretty good idea because that is deep in IMCA late model territory. And plus, last year at the Fall Brawl, we had Daryl DeFrance, a Marshalltown, Iowa regular, make his Malvern Bank Super Late Model debut. So I thought Marshalltown would be a good show, but unfortunately we couldn't get Motown on the schedule. But we did get the couple of Kansas stops. We did get I-35 down at Winston, Missouri. We got them back on the schedule. And this is looking to be a very, very promising year. I've got a lot of big dates bookmarked on the Malvern Bank Super Late Model schedule.
Well, this is the big question. We talked about there's some new guys that are joining the series full-time. One of them is going to be Jesse Sobbing in that Malvern Bank Home Pride Motorsports late model. And Luke Cochran has stepped up and created the Bill Rick Rookie Fund, which is going to be going to the Rookie of the Year, and there's also going to be a series winning. I can't remember what he was calling it, but there's a $7,777 pool that somebody could win $777 if they go back-to-back victories in the Malvern Bank Series. So they're doing a lot of things, and I think it's to try to unseat that dang Kyle Burke, who's won, 3-4 championships in a row?
Make it, 3. He's won 4 in a row. He is the only 5-time champion of the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series. I mean, he finished out the year with 5 wins last year. Again, just edging out Phil Ayton Jr. by 1 victory. And and there are going to be plenty of opportunities to get the back-to-back. I mean, opening weekend, May 5th and 6th, we have the Crawford County Speedway to open it. Very next night, we have McCool Junction. We have the 3-day swing over Memorial Day weekend. We have,
Rock Rapids, Norfolk,
Rock Rapids
and
on
Jefferson.
Jefferson on that Friday through Sunday. Then we have 4th of July weekend. We have US 30 on Thursday. We have I-80 on Friday. And then we have McCool Junction on Saturday. And all the other 2-day shows in between. Like we said, we have the Sunflower Brawl, the Sunflower Swing through Kansas, Lakeside, and Mayetta. So there are going to be a few opportunities to do that. And, of course, we got a lot of good shows on hand. I mean, was it the first Friday of June? We go to I-80, and we also have the USAC wingless sprint cars on the card. And then our first trip to Adams County, that Malvern Bank Duels show. That's going to be fun. We got the super late models along with the United States Modified Touring Series on the same card. So there are going to be plenty of good races. And then, of course, we get the Nebraska Cup back on the schedule. That was a race I was really looking forward to last year, but unfortunately, Mother Nature put a damper to those plans.
Last year, you had the plans of reaching about 60 races. What's your plans this year?
Actually, I had about 100 races on my schedule when everything was all said and done. I had about 21 rainouts after I did the math. I'm trying to push for 100 races again. I recently added a memorial race for down in Fairbury, so I have a couple of trips to Fairbury to make. I have Beatrice on my schedule for Spring Nationals, for the County Fair and Septemberfest. And then, of course, running US 30 on a weekly basis on Thursday. And I'll be back in the pits with you at I-80 on Fridays, and then McCool Junction on Saturday. And wherever the super late models go, I'll be with them as well.
Don't forget the Knoxville Nationals. You're on our ticket to go down there and help us with that race.
Sweet, I really am.
Yeah, you're at it.
All right, I'll put Knoxville on my schedule again. It's been about 6 years since I've been to Knoxville, so it'll be good to go back there, and yeah, we'll give Chris Krug a hard time there.
That's a must. It's always a must. Go
Always
to Dingus and give Chris Krug a hard time. That's the two things you got to do at Knoxville.
Yeah, and of course I got to go 50, and you know I'm not going to miss the Silver Dollar Nationals, not for the world.
Yeah.
And then of course we got that World of Outlaws special out at Eagle on a Tuesday. Actually, the Tuesday before my birthday, the World of Outlaws head out to Eagle, so that's going to be a must on my schedule as well.
Anthony Ainslie, you can follow him on Facebook. You can catch him out at pretty much any racetrack. If there's a special or it's racing and it's his home track, you'll see him at the booth. Anthony, I do appreciate your time, bud. Have a good season.
Absolutely. You too. We'll see you around.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back. The Front Stretch rolls on next.
There is no such thing as an off-season at Joe's Karting. No matter how cold it is outside or how much snow is on the ground, you'll always be warm and dry inside at Joe's Karting, the Metro's largest indoor karting track. Located in Council Bluffs on 23rd Avenue next to AMC Theater. Find Joe's Karting on Facebook or head to joeskarting.com for hours, pricing, and a schedule of booked parties. That's joeskarting.com. Karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's Karting today and find out what all your friends already know.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the Front Stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the Front Stretch.
Welcome back to the Front Stretch, heading into turn number 3, and it's time to sit down with the announcer of Knoxville Raceway, Tony Bokhoven, the announcer out at Knoxville Raceway. And unfortunately, Tony, you guys have had a rough week out there with the passing of probably one of the most influential persons when it comes to Knoxville Raceway, Ralph Capitani, passing away on Monday. Talk a little bit about Ralph and your experiences with him. You've been at the track for a long time, so you've had to have rubbed an elbow with him or two.
Yeah, Cappy was a unique individual in that his presence was bigger than life, but when you talked to him, he was as down to earth and as concerned about you as you were concerned about yourself. And I think that's one of the things that made him unique. If you think about people in the racing business, whether it's promoters or car owners or whatever, he was in a place where, he had to enforce the rules, put on the race, and keep 300 plus employees pretty happy that work part-time every week, And so he had a knack of balancing all of that and made you feel really good about what you were doing.
Talk about somebody that made a big impact on a racetrack. Being lovers of dirt racing, that's what we all want to do. But to take a facility from being a Marion County fairground to be an 8,000 seats to the Knoxville Raceway and 24,000 seats, I mean, the guy built an empire is an understatement.
Yeah, what a lot of people don't realize is, Cappy had 24 bosses, running a racetrack that's owned by a fair board or a Marion County Fair Association. There were 24 members on that fair board. And as you can imagine, every one of them had their opinion on how Cappy should have been able to run that racetrack. And I think what finally happened there was, you don't have a promoter like him stay 34 seasons if he's not doing something right. And I think they figured that out. They started to see that, what Ray Grimes had put in place prior to when he left in 1977 and Cappy coming on board in 78 and kind of taking the reins from there. If Knoxville Raceway was going to become anything more than an old fairgrounds racetrack, something dramatic had to happen. And Cappy was a pretty confident guy. He had made a lot of contacts in the industry, and took some chances. And I would say Cappy would have told you that he wasn't sure all those chances were the right ones when he took them, but he got lucky, and they all worked out really well. The other thing that Cappy was always, pretty proud of was he was proud of the people that he put in place. So if you knew Cappy at all, he never took credit for the fact that, we put grandstands up on the back straightaway. He attributed that to he had the best race car drivers in the world that wanted to come race at his track, and because of that, people wanted to come and watch. So there were a lot of unique things like that he did to instill confidence and trust in people without saying that, he had these great ideas.
What was the first experience you had with him when you met him and started talking about working at Knoxville?
Yeah, so when I started there, I was a fan, and I used to sit in Section F, Row 7 every week with my friends and family, and just in front of me sat Jack Hurway, who was the announcer at the time. His daughter sat just in front of us there, and so I got to know them, and through them met Jack. And Jack, was a great guy, or is a great guy, and was really fun to work with. And one night we were hanging out at their house in Newton, Iowa, and I said to him, well, to be an announcer, you don't have to be all that good. You just have to like to hear yourself talk. And we laughed about that. And so one day, at the time, it was Jack Hurway, Dennis Wilson, and Dave Reef, who now is the voice of the National Hot Rod Association. And Dave was going to interview with TNN. And so Hurway called me up one time and said, well, I've convinced Cappy that he should let you come and fill in for Dave Reef. And so at that point, I thought, oh, boy. I have run my mouth one too many times here. And so we used to announce from the outside at the old grandstands before the suites were put up. And so at this point, I still hadn't met Cappy yet. And so I show up this particular Saturday. We're doing time trials, and we used to rotate between Dennis Wilson, Jack, and I. And I'm standing there, and I just laid the microphone down, and I look to my right, and I see Cappy coming in. Cappy had this very presence of walking up to you very sternly with a stern look on his face, and I'll never forget this. He had a cigarette in his left hand, and he walked up to me and he said, you that kid from Pella? And yes, sir, yes, I am. And I thought, I'm breaking out into a sweat, because I don't know what's about to happen. And he says, you ever done this before? And I said, no, sir, I have not. This is my first time. And he just put his hand on my shoulder and said, just don't get nervous. And he turned around and walked away. And that was my first encounter with this guy. And so Hurway, I'm standing there kind of, not sure what just happened. And Hurway looked at me and said, well, you going to announce tonight or not? And so, I got back in the game and went forward. Well, then that next Monday, I got a call from Hurway, and he said, hey, you're supposed to call Cappy today. And that was all he said. And so I thought, oh, my gosh, I was young. That was 20 years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking to myself, he's going to tell me how awful I did and that I probably should never come back again. And so I call him up, and Arlita, who was his right-hand lady at the time, hands me over to Cappy, and he said, well, and Cappy had kind of a rough voice. He says, well, you didn't do all that bad. Why don't you just start coming back every week? And so that's literally how it started for me.
Wow.
And the next week was the week before the Knoxville Nationals, and then my third night was the Knoxville Nationals. So it was a big deal. And if you talk to anybody, Cappy wasn't a guy that would come looking for you, on Saturday to have a conversation with you. But when he spoke to you, it was important, and you needed to listen. And at the end of each season, he didn't tell you had a job next year. He would always say, well, if I didn't call you and tell you didn't, then you better be here in April. And so that was just kind of how he was. He didn't say many things, but when he said something, it was worth listening to.
What do you have a one story that you just love and you'll kind of cherish about Cappy?
Well, Cappy was one of those guys, that, like I said, he didn't say a lot, and if he gave you a chewing, you had it coming. But as an announcer, I get pretty tuned up when I'm calling a race, and I tend to start yelling and stuff like that. And one night I'm calling this race, and I hear the door slam between the announcer's booth and where Cappy was sitting. And I mean, it was hard. It was a hard slam, and I got done, and he walked over and he said, if you're wondering why I slammed the door, it's because you were hurting my damn ears. And he slammed the door again, and I won't ever forget that. And so from that point on, I've kind of always tried to remind myself that you don't always have to be on level 10 when you're announcing. And so, but that's easier said than done sometimes. But there's a million stories about Cappy. If you've been around Knoxville at all, before the concrete was put in outside of the pit gate, that used to be all dirt. And one time during the Nationals, it had rained, And, Cappy was a coach at the Knoxville High School for a lot of years. And there were several of his football players that were hanging around the racetrack. Well, along started this mud wrestling competition, and there stands Cappy in the middle of this, refereeing this wrestling that's going rampant. There's hundreds of people in this mud hole wrestling, and Cappy's standing right in the middle of it. So there's all kinds of things like that. But one thing that I'll always remember about him is it didn't matter if you were Terry McCarl or Steve Kinzer or Sammy Swindell. He was as fair to each one of those guys as he was to, a regular Knoxville regular or a World of Outlaw driver. It didn't matter what the situation was. He was extremely fair. And I think that's why people held him in such high regard, because it would be easy for a promoter to, lean one way or the other. Do I always take care of my locals, or do I take care of the stars that are here? And in Cappy's mind, everybody was on the same plane.
Was that his calling card? Is that what made him such an aspiring guy? Was that he was a fair and even guy?
Yeah, absolutely. He treated everybody the same. There's old video of the year he put Sammy to the back at the Nationals, and the crowd just booed him horribly. But Cappy stands on the front straightaway with the microphone and says, if Sammy's half the driver I think he is, he can probably win this thing from the back. And then the place cheers. But that's what Cappy was known for. It didn't matter. He was fair. He stuck to the rules. If he figured out the rules were wrong, it's not that he wouldn't change them, but he didn't change them that night. The rules were the rules, and that's what he stuck to. And I think that's why people held him in such high regard. I think that's why he and Ted Johnson ended up getting along so well during their careers was, Ted couldn't come in there and bully Cappy around because Cappy stuck to the rules, and people respected him for that.
Tony, you guys have been in our thoughts all week. We'll continue to think about you all over at Knoxville Raceway as you guys are going through this. A tough loss for you guys, but you guys will trudge on, and the season will be here before you know it.
Yeah, it's gonna, it's a tough time. Ray Grimes just passed recently, and now Cappy, and I know Cappy would want everybody to know that he loved every minute of his 34 seasons, and the best part of his job were the fans. And so if anybody, listening to your show here has had an interaction with Cappy or passed him while he was dragging his left foot on his golf cart, cherish those times because he valued those as much as anybody else did.
Well, hopefully the Fair Board feels the same way about him. I'm sure they do, and hopefully they'll honor him with a memorial grandstand section or something like that.
Absolutely. I think it's going to make the Capitani Classic during the Nationals even that much more special this coming year.
Yeah, that's going to be a big one for you guys. Tony, we do appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of your off season, and we'll hopefully see you over there for the Knoxville Nationals.
Sounds great. Look forward to seeing you guys at the track. Thanks for having me on.
Again, that was Tony Bokhoven of Knoxville Raceway. We're going to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 4, and we'll wrap this baby up.
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located just north of Bass Pro Shop, Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 100-plus people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team building, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
It's checkers or wreckers as we enter turn 4. On the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs.
Welcome back to the front stretch. Just about ready to wrap this baby up, heading into turn number 4, brought to you by Quaker Steak and Lube, the official watering hole of the front stretch. All the green flag action for today's race will be on the big screens at Quaker Steak and Lube. The Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Coverage is on Fox and PRN starting at about 1. All picks are due for the Pick'ems contest at about 1:30, not about 1:30, it is 1:30 p.m., so no longer when the green flag waves. It is now 1:30 p.m. Central Time, regardless of if we have any rain today, any kind of delays, anything weird. Picks are locked at 1:30 for Atlanta today. Dirk, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, and Carl Edwards were your top 5s this time last year for the race. I know the segment racing is going to throw for a big swing, but Jimmy Johnson's been the man at Atlanta the last 2 races with winning both the races. I think it's a smart thing to take him while he's got a good chance of being the winner.
Well, and like Chad said, Kurt Busch has had a good career at Atlanta also, so maybe that good old momentum is going to carry him through. But again, new car and stuff, chassis are the same, so just the body's different. Whether or not they'll be able to rock and roll. I mean, he ran good there last year. Like I said, he was on the front row, ran a good race. And you were talking about heading over to Quaker Steak. Anybody that didn't make the Daytona party for Quake and Steak missed a good time. We had a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. We had a good time. And by the way, once again, thank you to everybody who came out and had a good time. We hope you enjoyed it, winning prizes and answering trivia questions. We had it was a really good time. I was really happy with the turnout, and I thought everyone had a good time. I thought the race was phenomenal, and so it kind of helped with keeping things going. We didn't have any big long red flags and delays, anything like that. So it worked out great. You can pencil in the Homestead viewing party. We'll be doing that again, and we may do a couple other parties as the year goes on. Maybe something like I don't know, maybe all-star race viewing party or something like that. That might be fun to do. But with Quaker Steak seeing a good response out of that, they're always receptive to us doing more parties out there.
Well, something like Charlotte. A Sunday night with it, nobody having to work Monday. That would be, something we could work out.
I'm unfortunately that is my favorite race of the entire year. That's the Charlie Clark Memorial at I-80 Speedway.
Oh yeah, that is correct.
So I'll be out there, but that's not to say you couldn't throw something and get a bunch of people to go out and have a good time and take the prize vault with you and hand out a bunch of prizes. But to talk about Atlanta today, to say tires are going to be a premium is quite the understatement.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they fall off so bad just because the track's so old. That's why they're going to be the last time they run on this surface, and they're going to resurface it. And
what do they say? Usually from the first lap on a set of tires to the last lap, it's about a second and a half fall off.
It's about a second and a half in like the first dozen to 15 laps. And then, and then you take the good off the tires. Then you've got what you've got for the other 40 laps you're going to run on them, because I think it's about a 55-lap pit window, I do believe there.
Atlanta Motor Speedway today, we had to do a quick turn 4 because we had such a good show packed full of a lot of great stuff. I want to say thank you to Chad Robb, Mr. Fantasy. You can get him online, NASCARFantasyTips.com for more information. I want to say thanks to Anthony Ainslie for the preview of Beatrice, Junction, and the Malvern Bank Super Late Model schedules. Tony Bokhoven for joining us in turn number 3 to talk about Ralph Capitani.
And for anybody that thought maybe we messed up and didn't put any service information for Ralph Capitani, the service was here this past week, so to go ahead and put that out to you guys would have been kind of a waste of time. So just to let you know. It
was an unfortunate thing that Knoxville's lost a lot of really important people during this off season. So and so have we. We've lost some big guys over here with Bill Rick passing away, and not a big name, but a big guy out at the racetrack, Randy Kay, passing away. So it's been a tough time for dirt racing, and we're all ready for the off season to be done.
Yes, sir.
Atlanta today on Fox and PRN at 1:30. Coverage starts at 1. All picks are due at 1:30. Make sure you get them in. Log into your NASCARpoolsonline.com. Get logged in and submit your pick for Atlanta before 1:30 when the picks are due.
Thanks again, Rick Havenridge from Wealth Partners.
Absolutely. Appreciate Rick stepping up and helping out with that. And if you want to get involved in it, you still have time. We're going to keep it open until Las Vegas. You have to email me, though, frontstretchradio@gmail.com. For Dirk Houston, I'm Dan Taylor. This has been The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting. We'll be back next weekend to do it all again on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
The official watering hole of The Front Stretch has you covered any day of the week with the best wings, great burgers, and amazing steaks. Each weekday from 4 to 6 is happy hour, featuring $1 off draft and well drinks plus $4 Luberitas. Mondays are kids' night. Tuesdays are all-you-can-eat wings for $12.95, and the lube even delivers to the Council Bluffs area. Like Quaker Steak and Lube Council Bluffs on Facebook for a full list of weekly events.
Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Mid-America Drive, Council Bluffs.
Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs is the high-octane excitement you've been looking for. It's the Metro's largest indoor track with eco-friendly, low-emission engines. You can enjoy fast-paced road course racing just across the river at Joe's Karting, located near Bass Pro in the Mid-America Center on 23rd Avenue and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. Open Monday to Thursday, 2 to 10, Fridays until 11, Saturdays 11 to 11, and Sundays noon to 8.
This has been the Front Stretch Radio Show, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. To contact Dan or Dirk, find them on Facebook at The Front Stretch or email them at frontstretch590@gmail.com. If you missed any part of today's show or want to hear a previous show, subscribe to the Joe's Karting YouTube page where you can find almost every Front Stretch show.